In 2002, an article came out in a Russian newspaper about a mysterious artifact referred to as the 8-million-year-old lady. The article was written by a journalist named Oleg Kolishkin, who said he'd struck up a conversation with a former KGB officer. And this former KGB had told the journalist a sensational story about an incredible archaeological find and the government's attempts to cover it up. A story that, if true, would completely rewrite everything we knew about the history of humanity. It was September 5th, 1969, in the village of Ryazhchik, Russia. Alexander Masaligin, the head of a local mining operation, was busy at work when he received news from one of his miners. The men had been working away about 70 meters underground when suddenly their pickaxes hit something. Whatever this thing was, it stood out from the rock surrounding it. The men chipped their way around it, eventually revealing what looked to be a large, solid object. It was hard to tell what it was made of. It looked like a mix of marble and crystal. There were no joints or seams, just a smooth, solid piece, which was strange because whatever this thing was, it did not look like a natural formation. It looked a lot like a sarcophagus. When Masaligin heard about this, he was thrilled. This was a coal mine, and seeing the significance of this find, he quickly informed local authorities. The excitement soon turned to concern though. The miners were worried that the artifact was going to be seized and that they'd be left without any reward. But what could they do, right? They weren't going to get anything just leaving the thing there and not telling anyone. It had to be brought to the surface. As the miners worked to excavate the sarcophagus, they couldn't help but wonder what could be inside it. I mean, sure, most likely it was going to be human remains, but if this person had been rich and important, maybe there'd be treasure along with them. Gold, precious jewels, who knew? Maybe they could take some of it before the authorities arrived. Well, what they found was much more shocking. First of all, the casket was hermetically sealed. It seemed to have this vacuum-like effect when it opened up. This was a pretty sophisticated preservation method, and inside lay the body of a young woman. Not the bones, but an eerily well-preserved body, surrounded in some sort of pink liquid. She looked to be around 25 to 30 years old. She was beautiful, dark brown hair down to her waist. She was dressed in a white lace gown embroidered with flowers. There was also intricate jewelry adorning her body, bracelets, rings, and a tiara, all made of what looked like precious metals and gemstones. Some accounts even say that her eyes were open and that they were a deep blue. There were also strange symbols and inscriptions on the jewelry, written in an unknown language. Also inside was a small black metal box. The men just couldn't believe what they were looking at, and as they all stood there dumbfounded, one worker dipped his finger into the liquid and apparently was warm to the touch, and began to react when exposed to air, changing color from pinkish to bluish. Soon after the princess was unearthed, men in gray protective suits arrived at the scene, claiming the discovery was contagious. One story goes that the worker who dipped his finger in the liquid began experiencing severe mental decline in the weeks that followed, eventually freezing in the cold right outside of his home one night. It looked like he'd wandered outside and for some reason couldn't get back in. News about the discovery had spread amongst locals and a crowd had gathered, and the villagers watched as authorities transported the strange artifact away via helicopter. Following the discovery of what would go on to be dubbed the Tisul Princess, a scientist from Novosibirsk examined the remains, and he came to a pretty outlandish conclusion. According to him, this woman had died a very long time ago. I mean, hundreds of millions of years ago. He also said that the pink liquid surrounding her was a complete mystery, and even her clothing was strange. He couldn't tell what the material was, but it had a silvery sheen that almost seemed to glow, and even weirder, there were no seams or stitches visible. It looked like it had been woven using some unknown technique. All of this was very strange, but there wasn't much media coverage at the time. Just one brief article in a local newspaper. The excitement seemed to die down amongst the locals, and things soon went back to normal. That is until men in gray suits started showing up in Ryazhchik again. They started searching local buildings and homes, confiscating all copies of the newspaper that featured the article on the Tisul Princess. When people asked what they were there for or what was going on, the mysterious men adamantly denied any existence of the princess. It was clear they were trying to erase all records of her. The scientist who examined the remains and the editor of the newspaper also got in big trouble for disclosing information about the find, and people began to drop. The miners and the people who claimed they were part of the crowd the day the mysterious casket was taken away. So was the strange pink liquid actually toxic, or did the government have something to do with it. Now, to try and answer that question, we gotta ask why the government would want to keep a find like this secret. What would a discovery like this really mean? Well, now we get into the fun part. With a story as wild as this, it's really no surprise that the Tisul Princess has made for some pretty fun ideas as to her origin. Ever since this story resurfaced in 2002, people have come up with some pretty crazy ideas. Some think she might have come from an ancient advanced civilization, or that she may have come from a different planet altogether. This is thanks again to the stuff I mentioned earlier, the mysterious liquid, the fact that her sarcophagus seemed to have been built in this advanced way, the mystery about her clothing and the symbols on her jewelry. As stories kept spreading though, the government kept denying her existence, and many people, including other scientists, found the whole thing very hard to believe. The idea that this woman could have lived over 800 million years ago, way before dinosaurs roamed the earth, just seemed utterly insane. But back in time again, a few years after the initial discovery, a whole bunch of specialists and workers showed up at the site again, supposedly hunting for more artifacts. They didn't tell anyone that, but military barriers were set up to keep curious locals away, which of course only made people more suspicious about what was going on. And one story goes that a few soldiers, feeling a bit too relaxed at a local pub one night, accidentally let some stuff slip. According to the men, 3 more sarcophagi had been found. Who the hell were these people? Where did they come from? Were they really buried millions of years ago? How could their bodies be so perfectly preserved, looking as if they were just asleep? Well, some started pointing at historical references about a young woman thought to be the daughter of Cicero, a famous Roman statesman. She too was discovered in a sarcophagus encased in a transparent liquid that kept her body intact for centuries. Scientists tried to analyze this liquid, but no luck. Meanwhile, the government kept trying to control the narrative, but the tighter they clamped down, the more curious people got. And there are even crazier theories about the Tisul Princess. One is that she could have been displaced in time due to a rift or an anomaly, ending up millions of years in the past. The advanced preservation methods and materials might not have been alien technology or that of an advanced ancient civilization, but from the future. Maybe time travel experiments resulted in a handful of people being stranded in different eras across different parts of the planet, with the Tisul Princess and her 2 friends being some of these lost travelers. And I know you're probably very curious, probably wanting a satisfying end to the story, but unfortunately we don't really have any closure. Could we have known more if the government had been more open about it? Does someone really have the answers and are just trying to keep them hidden? Well, it's possible. It's also possible that this never happened, or a discovery was made but has been embellished over the years, turning into a full-blown urban legend. First of all, the idea of a human existing millions of years ago really does conflict with the scientific understanding of human evolution. Fossil records in evolutionary biology place the emergence of modern humans around 200,000 years ago. Just a slight difference in time there, and there's no physical evidence of these sarcophagi. Some people claim they've seen them, but don't have any solid proof. And while we could say that this is all thanks to the Russian government's attempts at covering the whole thing up, I mean, why would a discovery like this be kept under wraps anyway? Well, for the sake of ending things on a more interesting note, let's get back to that. The Russian authorities may have wanted to suppress a discovery that could fundamentally alter our understanding of history, science, or human origins to maintain some sort of social order and control. The Soviet government could have also confiscated the sarcophagus to study and reverse engineer the advanced technology to gain the upper hand in the Cold War. This was 1969 after all. But what do I think? Well, I think it's a very fascinating story. Is there any truth to it though? Well, maybe. A lot of people get this one confused with the Siberian Ice Maiden, a very well documented discovery of a mummy in the Siberian mountains in 1993. She was discovered by a Russian archaeologist named Natalia Polosmark in a tomb in the Ukok Plateau. She was believed to date back around 500 BCE, making her approximately 2,500 years old. She was found in a wooden sarcophagus covered with felt blankets and a cowhide rug, and she was dressed in intricately woven garments made of wool and felt adorned with jewelry, earrings, a necklace, and various ornaments made of gold and other precious metals. It was likely she held a high social status in her community. Her burial seemed to have been part of a complex ritual, which led the archaeologists to believe she could have been a priestess or a noblewoman. So, lots of similar elements to this story here. What's always been strange about this event is that there was a lack of any discernible impact crater, which doesn't exactly align with what we typically see when a large space rock slams into our planet, right? So what the hell could have happened? Did otherworldly travelers have some kind of mechanical failure resulting in a less than graceful touchdown in the Siberian wilderness? You know, anything's possible. It's definitely a much more enticing idea than a meteor. Until this day, we still don't know exactly what happened in the deep forests of Siberia that day. And some dare to entertain the idea that maybe, just maybe, there's more to the story than a run-of-the-mill space rock exploding in Earth's atmosphere. Next up on the list, we have the case of the frozen hands. This is a really icky one. Back in 2018, Russian fishermen came across a really lovely surprise in Siberia along the Amur River. A sack containing 54 frozen human hands. As you can imagine, the fishermen really didn't have much use for a bunch of frozen hands, so they alerted the police, and it was found that the hands belonged to 27 different people. So all kinds of wild theories started spreading online. You can probably imagine what some of those sounded like. Of course, the main theory was that a hand-severing freak was roaming across the icy tundra chopping off people's hands. It seemed as if these hands had been improperly discarded from a hospital. Back in 2012, a strange cylindrical object was discovered by residents of a small rural village called Ostradensky in Siberia. The object weighed hundreds of pounds and was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Village residents hooked it up to a trailer, hauled it back to town, where they alerted the authorities, who came and picked it up to be studied. The villagers, as well as folks on the internet, began speculating as to what this mysterious object was and where it came from. Of course, space was being thrown around in almost every conversation. Was this part of some secretive space-faring government technology? Was it alien in origin? Well, an official at the Russian Space Agency soon made a statement that the object had no relation to space technology of any kind. But if it wasn't part of a spacecraft of some kind, then what was this thing? How did it end up there? Nobody really knows. Lake Baikal in southern Siberia is the world's largest freshwater lake by volume. It's incredibly deep, and there are some pretty eerie stories about it. First of all, there's all the mysterious lights that are reported, not just hovering or flying above it, but also coming from the depths of the water. And there's a very creepy story that was supposedly an attempted cover-up by the Russian government. So the story goes that back in 1982, a team of Navy divers were doing routine diving exercises in the lake when a number of them spotted disturbing figures, a very strange sense. They were tall and slender, well over 6 feet tall, and wearing what looked to be silver suits. They also had large circular glowing, unblinking eyes. The creatures began pursuing the divers, who panicked and swam back up to the surface. They reported what they'd seen to their superiors, but that's where the story ends. The existence of the strange creatures has never been confirmed, nor has it been denied. In recent years, researchers have started observing these huge craters popping up across the Siberian tundra. The first sightings of these massive holes were reported by pilots flying over the Yamel Peninsula in 2014. Then, more and more of them started forming, seemingly out of nowhere. They were like natural sinkholes. The holes are about 65 feet across when they first form, then they get bigger, and they kind of just explode into existence. Scientists still aren't 100% sure what's causing this. Some speculate that climate change could be a major factor though, with most craters seeming to form after particularly warm summers. They seem to form because of a buildup of methane, but it isn't entirely clear why this methane is building up. The Valley of Death earned its ominous nickname as an animal graveyard. Tons of reports have documented the unexplained deaths of various animals in the desolate region of Siberia. Birds, foxes, bears, most of which were seemingly healthy before they died. But there is a clear explanation for this. All the volcanoes, they emit high concentrations of poisonous gases. The noxious gases, including carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, can be very dangerous for anyone or anything that ventures into the valley. The emissions can cause dizziness and confusion and even death in high enough concentrations, thus all the dead animals. The place can also be pretty dangerous simply because of how remote and inhospitable it is. But this isn't the only mysterious valley in this part of the world, nor is it the only one nicknamed Death Valley. Oh boy. There's also the Death Valley of Yakutia. This one has some really mysterious urban legends around it. For one, you have the domes. Locals tell of these mysterious half-submerged objects that appear to be made out of copper-colored metal. Often described as large, dome-shaped objects, they're said to plunge into the ground from above. There are stories of people getting too close to them and then suffering severe illness or even death afterwards. Now, this sounds pretty crazy, but there could be some truth to it. After all, the Yakusha used to be a site where rocket launches were tested. The area could be littered with debris from failed launches. People have also claimed to see strange things in the area, like hovering, sometimes exploding balloons, basically UFOs. Given the history of nuclear tests in the area by the USSR, some of these phenomena might have had real, albeit terrifying origins. It's also possible that high levels of methane gas in the area could have contributed to hallucinations. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists found a well-preserved mammoth in Siberia, later named Yuka. She was a young mammoth, about 6 to 8 years old, and lived around 39,000 years ago. Yuka's body was in really good shape. Its body measured about 2.5 meters in length, and it was really well intact, with her trunk, bones, some of her flesh, hair, and eyes still preserved. Finding a dinosaur in this condition would be absolutely unreal, wouldn't it? That'll never happen, but anyway. They think Yuka might have fallen into a mud pit or drowned, which helped preserve her so well. People probably butchered her for meat as well, as there were cut marks on her bones. Scientists studied her DNA to learn about mammoths and their connection to modern elephants, and right now Yuka is currently being held in Moscow. Yuka isn't the only ancient animal to have thawed out of the Siberian permafrost though, not by a long shot. In 2019, scientists found a thousands-year-old bear carcass preserved in the permafrost. The ancient brown bear carcass was discovered by reindeer herders, and again, it was incredibly well preserved. The carcass dates back approximately 3,500 years, placing it in the late Bronze Age. Imagine you're riding around in a helicopter when all of a sudden you're plummeting towards the earth, except there's nothing wrong with the chopper. Instead, you're being sucked into a gigantic hole in the ground. The Maritime mine in eastern Siberia is one of the largest human-made holes in the world. As if you needed me to tell you that, I mean, just look at it. This colossal open-pit kimberlite diamond mine has a depth of over 525 meters, which is about 1,722 feet, and spans a diameter of 1,200 meters, or around 3,900 feet. It's the fourth deepest of its kind in the entire world. This mine is said to be so vast that it reportedly creates powerful downdrafts capable of, again, sucking in helicopters. And for this reason, there is restricted airspace over the area. Now, one of the strangest things ever to happen in Siberia was, of course, the Dyatlov Pass incident in 1959. 9 Soviet hikers ventured off into the Ural Mountains, never to be seen again. Alive, that is. And the cause of their deaths became quite possibly the biggest hiking mystery in history. We still don't know what happened here, at least not definitively. In 2020, Russian authorities came out saying they likely died in an avalanche, and a lot of people, including me, just aren't really convinced of that. So anyway, this group of hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set out on their expedition on January 27th. Their journey was expected to take around 16 days to complete, but when no message was received after their arrival at their destination, and days went by after they were meant to have returned, their families became concerned and authorities were contacted. A search party was organized, and on February 26th, the hikers' tent was discovered, abandoned, and ripped open, but from the inside. The bodies of the hikers were found scattered in the snow all over the place. Some were partially clothed and with signs of severe injuries. These included skull fractures, chest trauma. 2 of them were missing eyes. 1 of them had their tongue missing. And with how gruesome and mysterious this incident was, wild theories have been talked about ever since. Some theories go that the hikers were victims of a nuclear testing accident, some kind of government experiment or cover-up. Maybe the students came across something they weren't supposed to see. I've even heard like Sasquatch and the Yeti thrown into the mix. And then of course we have the avalanche theory, which again, I don't know, I just don't buy.
There was a small party of Inuit folks camped at the southern end of King William Island around the year 1850, and they could count themselves as one of the most isolated groups of people on Earth. They had never met white people, they had barely encountered other groups, so it was a uniquely terrifying experience for them to hear the sound of footsteps outside their igloo and find themselves facing a crowd of lurching figures with vacant eyes, blue skin, unable to talk, and barely alive. These were the last remnants of the ill-fated Franklin expedition, the 1845 British voyage of Arctic exploration that ended with the passing of everyone aboard. As ragged bands of expedition survivors split up and trudged south in a desperate bid to flee the Arctic on foot, folks throughout the region that lived there faced a real-life invasion of the walking unalive. They saw men raving wildly, they saw camps strewn with crazy corpses, and they saw Europeans begin to consume those who had already passed. Okay, if you're an arachnophobe, close your eyes for a moment, folks. Sea spiders have over 1,300 known species, and they have legs ranging from 1 millimeter in length to over 70 centimeters. That's over 2 feet. They tend to walk along the bottom of the ocean with their stilt-like legs, or swim just above it using an umbrella pulsing motion. They're predators with scavenging tendencies, and those really long legs I mentioned a moment ago are everything to them, since that's where they keep all their vital organs, because they don't have much of a body. They've also got this long nose situation. That's how they suck the insides out of worms, jellyfish, sponges, and other soft body prey. Though the specific hot springs that we're about to talk about are just shy of technically being above the Arctic Circle, part of the lands first claimed by Franklin Leach in 1906 would reach northerly enough to qualify, after having been inhabited by the Athabascan people, and would eventually become a ghost town as the gold ran dry. A resort would open far later in history, and in the 90s particularly, the owners of the establishment would report a slew of poltergeist activity. Objects would fly across the room, footsteps would be heard when no guests were present, and the translucent, gossamer-like visage of a woman would often be seen. She's believed to be the spirit of the wife of the owner. Cargo ship Octavius met its demise in 1761 after leaving China and setting sail for Britain via the Northwest Passage. At that time, no ship had ever successfully navigated that passage, and this ship disappeared. A whaling ship discovered the damaged remains of the ship in October of 1775 and boarded it to look for survivors and cargo. When the men ventured into the below-deck quarters, they found the ship's captain frozen at his desk, partway through filling out the ship's log, and the rest of the crew were similarly encased in ice throughout their rooms. The whalers snatched up the ship log and fled, leaving behind everything, including the first and last entries, which were stuck to the captain's frozen desk. This log revealed that the Arctic temperatures and ice captured the Octavius about 250 miles from Barrow, where all those aboard perished on November 11th of 1762. So there are folks in Inuit culture who speak of 8 physical worlds that exist on the edge of their own reality, and this tale hails from an unnamed elder who mistakenly fell into one of these alternate planes for 3 days. So there was one day she was playing outside, and suddenly the world began to shift and change around her. It looked different, there was a strange dreamlike feeling, and after spending what she thought were 20 to 30 minutes examining and exploring this world, she decided to clamp her teeth in her hand and wake herself up. She bit down so hard that redness poured out, creating a scar that it lasted for her entire life, and then the world as she knew slowly shifted back into focus. Upon finding her father searching for her, she found out that half an hour was, 3 days in our world. Though many Soviet accomplishments were once shrouded in cold secrecy, it was a known fact that the nation succeeded in digging the world's deepest man-made hole on the Kola Peninsula, a project that went on from 1970 to 1994. The hole itself was able to breach over 40,000 feet into the Earth's crust. Although such feat came with a plethora of rumors, it's widely accepted that the project was abandoned due to a lack of funding. But some folks have speculated that the drill had breached into an extremely hot cavern, and the microphone that they sent down picked up alleged screams of the damned, driving scientists to madness. A lot of folks allege that the scientists had dug all the way to hell itself. Okay, yeah, that's technically an urban legend, but imagine those screams. Ever hear the Phantom Trapper? A specter cursed to drive a team of 14 pure white huskies across the barren landscapes of winter for all eternity? Well, this ghost haunts the snowy fields of Labrador, and he goes simply by the name of Smoker to those who tell his tale. Sticking it out in the frigid north, this man, whose real name was possibly Esau, started off his entrepreneurship as a trapper. But it wasn't super successful, so he turned to brewing moonshine instead. And that got him into trouble with Mounties pretty often. So he doubled down. He fastened a suit of all-white furs, adopted an all-white husky dog sledding team to blend in with the snow, and managed to get away with things. He had some success, but then there was one day where a fall, glug-glugged, prompted him to break his back in the snowy north, and, well, backbreaking, you know how that goes. It is claimed that the man cried out to God before passing, begging to become a ghost out of fear that he'd be sent down there. Well, legend tells that even today, the howl of the wind is sometimes joined by the sound of a dog team running throughout the night. Occasionally, a person might catch a glimpse of an all-white dog team being driven by a figure in white furs, but they never leave tracks in the snow or stop on their eternal run. With a population of over 70,000 people as of 2022, the Norwegian city of Tromsø is the third most populated area above the Arctic Circle. Though it is far from the oldest town in Scandinavia, this place was officially founded in 1838, which leaves more than enough wiggle room for those trying to find a deep enough history to find ghost stories. Tales are often told of sea trolls and wraith-like wights prowling the beaches on the oceans, searching for victims in the night, and ghosts have been witnessed haunting each and every building downtown. Maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, it might be because the city center was built on an ancient graveyard. From 1947 to 1953, prisoners of the Soviet Union were forced into the awful task of building more than 800 miles of railway track in the frigid north of Siberia. Only around half the track would succeed in being built, the project grinding to a halt after the passing of a very particular world leader in 1953. But the railway project wouldn't end before leading to the passings of over 300,000 people. In time, the incomplete railway would achieve another name: a certain railway of end of life. Many of the abandoned, dilapidated structures still stand to this day, and some urban explorers claim to hear the tormented, ethereal screams, sounds of labor, and other ghostly activity amongst the ruins. Sedna is the goddess of the sea and marine animals in Inuit mythology. She's known as the mother of the sea, mistress of the sea, and her myths describe how she came to rule over the underworld. So in the main legend that we know of, she is a giant. She's the daughter of the creator god Anguta, with a great hunger that causes her to attack her parents. She's dissatisfied with the men found for her by her father, decides to marry a dog, and her father is so angry at this that he throws her into the sea, and when she tries to climb back into the boat, he gets rid of her fingers. They become the first seals, and that's how she became a mighty sea goddess. Now, other versions of the legend depict her as a beautiful maiden who rejects marriage proposals from hunters. Her father gives her a sleeping potion, gives her to a hunter who takes her to a large nest on a cliff and reveals his true form: a giant bird spirit. Her father tries to rescue her when he realizes the truth, but the bird spirit becomes angry, causing a great storm, and her father panics, throws her into the sea. And once again, attempting to cling to the kayak, her hands freeze and her fingers fall off, once again becoming the creatures of the sea. She falls to the bottom, grows a fishtail. In one particular tradition, she was already in the kayak when a storm started. Her family was like, "We're blaming you." Once again, she goes into the sea. This time, her father gets rid of her fingers in pieces, bit by bit by bit. And she does have control over the sea creatures that come from her. Between all the versions, we can see how the origins of how seals, walruses, and whales came to be. If humans anger this goddess, she stops the animals from coming to their hunting sites, thus causing famine. She is generally considered a vengeful goddess. Hunters must pray to her to release the sea animals from the ocean depths for their hunt. Folks have thrown various different things into the sea as offerings over the years. And, good luck.
Number 10, a frozen bird. Back in 2018, an extremely well-preserved bird was found in northeastern Siberia. This is fascinating. It was found near the village of Balaya Gora, and the bird itself was quite hidden, which explains its incredible preservation. It was found 150 meters into an ice tunnel, and the fascinating thing here, other than of course the, mummified bird, is that it looks like it died maybe a week ago, maybe two. If I found this, I wouldn't look twice, to be honest. I would be like, ew, and I'd walk the other way. It's just a dead bird. Looks like a normal dead bird. Thing is, this bird froze 48,000 years ago. Yeah. Studying the birdo's DNA has given researchers insight on the end of the last ice age, so Yeah, he's bringing some science, bringing some facts out of his, frozen corpse. Number 9, preserved wolf pup. When this little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago, I bet she had no idea she would ever see the sunlight ever again. Discovered in Yukon, Canada. What's up? Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found. Period. Not bad. Not bad, Canada. Okay, I see you. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water at frozen mud. What a job that ought to be, eh? Just blasting out history. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little lady instead, which in my opinion, still treasure. She's still a treasured, valued soul. She's quite old to us, but when she went into the ice, X-ray tells us she was only 6 weeks old. She was just a little baby, a little bubble. X-rays showed that she also loved fish, so she had an appetite as well before, life happened. Number 8, surgeon notebook. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm so interested, right? It's like history, written private history, just tucked away. It's fascinating. Maybe I've played too much Zelda, I don't know. But notebooks feel very, national treasure to me. You know what I'm saying? Hold up to the light, see if it I like secrets. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon. Now it's well over 100 years old. It was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica, and the owner was George Levick. He was a photographer and a surgeon, doubled as both, nice, fancy, and he traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This was from 1910 to 1913. The book itself was completely frozen and the bindings were toast, obviously, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. You can still read descriptions of photos George took at Cape Adair. Descriptions of photos, that's, it's not the actual photo, but it's close enough. Imagine in 100 years you find a notebook and it's mine, just a bunch of cool S's, those like triangle of cool S's. I'm gonna draw one right now. Number 7, million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered, and it looks a little nice. It was tucked away under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. An ancient flower was found at a Cold War military camp. What a headline that is. Look, that's a message. That's definitely a message. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway. I've mentioned this before, I'm sure, on this channel, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen feature in history. Now, eventually, said project was scrapped and it was abandoned fully, but cut to 2019, it was rediscovered. Scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old plant just lying around, which is honestly not what they expected to find under a secret Cold War base. They're like, oh, that's actually quite lovely and not haunting and military. Nice. We love that. The fragments were so well preserved that it looked like it died recently, not a million years old. This would make for a great corsage. If you're going to prom and you're Captain America, this would be kind of fitting. Shout out to Captain America. He always comments on our videos. You're an OG. Studying these plants also can provide us clues on our future and where our current plants might end up. Frozen and lost to history, apparently. Can't wait. Number 6, frozen treasure. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is very recent. We don't find these often. Treasure frozen in ice. This sounds like something from Ocarina of Time. Again, I want to throw a heat arrow at it and watch it melt. What's inside? Let's do it. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across this box. This box filled with jewels that was just jammed in the ice. Yeah, they had to breathe on it a bit, melt it up, but alas, once reported to the French officers, this box contained around 100 precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees. This thing was worth at least $300,000 US, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, that's it. I'm calling in sick. I'm rich, I won the lottery. So where did this treasure come from? Well, since it was discovered on Mount Blanc, officials were able to trace the lost gems back to an Air India flight that sadly crashed on the mountain back in 1966. Of course, the lives of 117 passengers were lost, and because of the conditions, it's been next to impossible to recover anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? It's buried. Somehow, these family gems were able to see the light again. And yes, the owner did return the gems. Only 2 families claimed the goods, so, they gotta fight it out, I guess. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter, Daniel Roche, found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier, so I don't know, start licking that ice. You might find some diamonds. Who knows? How many licks does it take to get rich? Start breathing on it, pull out a 5. I'm like, yes, it's worth it. Number 5, 90 million-year-old rainforest. Yeah, we talked about flowers, but now let's get some more flowers in there. Back in 2020, while we were all catching up on Ozark, fossil traces in West Antarctica were discovered. Now this time, it wasn't a giant beaver or a bloody waterfall or anything weird. This time, it was lovely. This time, it was an ancient rainforest. 90 million years ago, when dinosaurs walked the planet, Antarctica was a paradise, honestly. Researchers compare Antarctica in the Cretaceous period to New Zealand today, with most days on average of 12 degrees Celsius. It's like Seattle. I like how scientists compare eras with modern day cities. They're like, oh, the Ice Age? Yeah, a lot of Regina energy over there. A lot of burr, a lot of Regina burr, a lot of Western Canada. I mean, that's where we end up finding them, so yeah, I guess that Does make sense. Number 4, the Glacier Girl. Okay, before you get worried, this next one here is a plane, not a frozen woman. So you can resume your calmness. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland, surrounded, of course, frozen in ice. Who would have thought? During World War II, July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and, of course, therefore, low visibility. The crew was saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice. It took years to get this plane back up, and she's now known as the Glacier Girl. And in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis bought the plane just because he just wanted it, wanted a plane, wanted a frozen glacier gal. Number 3, Grasshopper Glacier. Okay, time to get into a little bit of the gross, shall we? So, wouldn't be a Taylor McWaters list if there weren't bugs in it. Yeah, if you're not a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip this one. I'm not gonna take it personally. I'll save my jokes for the next one. A glacier in Montana is home to many grasshoppers and locusts. Yeah, frozen locusts. That's a fun word to say. Yeah, imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. Yeah, what a fool. You didn't think? Appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, nice, the mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct grasshoppers. A lot of remains of grasshoppers. These poor guys were traveling to find new life, and they must have got caught up in a blizzard or two. Now they're stuck here for another few 100,000 years or so. This reminds me of those suckers that have like a gross bug in the center. You know, like those like popsicles that have like a scorpion inside, and you're like, oh, interesting. Who buys those? No one buys those, right? Number 2, Western camel bones. Scientific name being Camelops hasturnus, meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. These bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek, just 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when they stumbled across these fabulous bones. What a weird sentence to say. These fabulous bones. Someone walks in, I'm like, it's animals. The last time these bones were operating, on living meat, was 75 to 125,000 years ago. The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding ones. It was so cold that scientists could actually extract DNA still. DNA that told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. A long time ago, they were just like, you know what? No. How about that? And finally, number 1, Antarctica Pyramid. I talk about the pyramids of Egypt a lot, so I gotta mix it up a little bit, right? Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I knew what was going on, right? Aliens, confirmed. Pretty much. Save the best for last. Back in 2016, a mountain in Antarctica was trending online, and we all immediately thought it was evidence of an ancient civilization because, well, that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're waiting for. Eric Rignot, a professor at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding in real time, adding that, quote, pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that, rarely 4. So this one has 4. I don't know. Aliens, frozen aliens? Just a coincidence? Who knows? Kicking off our list at number 10, Western camel bones. Scientific name being Camelops hasturnus, meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. There's a fun fact. Now these bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek. It was only 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when all of a sudden they stumbled across these massive bones, ancient bones. The last time these bones were operating on, actual limbs was 75 to 125,000 years ago. Isn't that incredible? The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding conditions. It was so cold that scientists could actually still extract DNA, which told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. Yeah, we had more camels. Now we don't have many camels. Sad. The more camels, the better. Number 9, Allen Hills meteorite. Alright, this one's for all the space nerds. This next one is literally out of this world. Back in December 1984, American meteor hunters discovered this fragment in Allen Hills, Antarctica. Now this meteor was appropriately named Allen Hills 48001, which is okay, that's right to the point. Now this rock was speculated to come from Mars, and in 1996 a scientist claimed that he discovered bacteria from the microscopic fossils on this meteorite. Now the news of course spread quickly and everybody started to lose their minds. Rightfully so, this is a while ago. Bill Clinton even chimed in. He made a speech about possible discoveries in space with aliens and shit. The scientific community later said this was not the case after further studies, but never say never. Feels like we're getting closer to finding life now with James Webb. I don't know, every time I click refresh, it's like, check out this thing that's in the past. I'm like, what? Number 8, more meteorites. For this one, we'll switch it up. This time, scientists found ice in meteorite. Nice, it's always a good time. James Webb is about to hopefully show us how much water is in space, and I personally am not ready for it. Back in 1990, after the 094 meteorite was discovered in the Algerian mountains, the rock was dated back to 4.6 billion years ago. So scientists studied the meteorite with synchrotron radiation-based X-ray nanotomography, leading scientists to find evidence of tiny pores believed to have been fossilized ice crystals. That's fun. That's, again, space aliens with water. Who knows? Hopefully. These pores have come from when the meteorite crossed the snow line in space. Now, the snow line is a sphere around the sun. It's the exact point where ice on meteorites melts. It's pretty cool. The study was to hopefully find out where water comes from in that galaxy, and it seems that it came from a lot further than we all thought, which is comforting, I guess. Yeah, there's water in space. It's just, way the fuck out there. Number 7, viruses. We're all talking about an ancient virus that's coming back now, some ancient mummified frozen virus. Sounds like we're doomed. Just over a year ago in China, scientists discovered an ancient virus. These samples came from the Tibetan Plateau, and the samples were originally collected back in 2015. Now the contents date back to around 14,400 years ago, long before Captain America went into the ice. And there's dust, gases, and of course, viruses over that long accumulated time, and glaciers just soaked it all in, right? Layer after layer, pushing history deeper into its icy core until scientists come in with a few megadrills. Now we're finding dinosaurs, we're finding bones, and also sometimes we find 33 viruses. Yeah, 33! That's like 2 more than my family computer had growing up. That's a lot of viruses. 4 of these viruses typically infect bacteria, and the rest were novel, which means that it's never been seen before. Yeah, how neat is that? Novel viruses. Just what the world needs right now. Number 6, Ötzi the Iceman. Discovered in September 1991, this mummy was found on the border of Austria and Italy. He's Europe's oldest known natural mummy. It's pretty amazing. He was covered in ice shortly after his death, so most of the 45-year-old man from the Copper Age was left in rather good condition. A 5,000-year-old man was found in ice. You lose this round, Captain America. Again, I'm just saying. I really thought I put you on this list. Not this time. Before we passed in the Italian Alps, Ötzi had a number of health problems, it seems, that we've now found many years later. He had arthritis, Lyme disease, and he was lactose intolerant. Thanks to science, we now know that Ötzi the Iceman was sharpening his tools right before his death. So he fought till the end. What an OG. Number 5, underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on B. I do my best, specifically underwater footage. I know that gives us all the creeps. We love exploring the deeps for some reason, and this next one I couldn't believe, honestly. You're about to see footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier, so buckle up. This glacier is the size of Florida, so if it collapses at any point in our time, our sea levels could rise 10 feet. And in 2019, researchers drilled 2,300 feet through the middle of Thwaites Glacier. Then they dropped a robot with a camera right down, and they saw this. For the first time ever, we've now seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true, and I can't agree more. It's her walking on the moon moment, and I could not agree more. This feels like another universe almost. This looks like the upside down. This is terrifying. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor, so think about that when you sleep tonight. Number 4, message in a bottle. Back in 1959, a geologist named Paul Walker, no, not that one, not even close, he decided to bury a message in a bottle, and he wanted to make a lasting statement about climate change, so he put this frozen message underneath rocks near a glacier in 1959, and then cut to 2013, well, what do we find again? We find Paul Walker's message in a bottle. The message inside was measurements, and to be exact, it was the length from the exact point of the bottle to the edge of a nearby glacier. But by 2013, many years later, said glacier had shrunk down 200 feet, so now the glacier was much further. A lasting statement indeed, I would say. Good call, Paul Walker. Number 3, Ice Age art. More ancient artwork, but this time we're going to the Colombian Amazon. Now the thing is, unlike other drawings found in the ceilings of tombs or anything like that, this frozen canvas stretches about 8 miles. It's incredible. The paintings inside, they're even more impressive. Dating back to 12,000 years ago, these were made near the end of the last ice age. Thousands of paintings, by the way, not just a handful of arrows, nothing like that, just a huge canvas. These were found in 2017, so pretty recently, but it was only last year where they finally went public with these Arctic findings. Now the findings being, paintings of elephants, massive sloths, horses from the ice age, snakes, birds, deer, that kind of stuff. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America. Yeah, pregnant women or the origins of the Ninja Turtles? I don't know. I'm on the fence. You tell me. Number 2, the Glacier Girl. Now, before you get worried, no, this next one is not a real person. This next one is a plane. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland surrounded in ice. Now, during World War II in July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and, of course, low visibility. Now, the crew was thankfully saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for now 50 years. Recently, it was dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice. It took years to get this plane back up, but now she of course is known as the Glacier Girl, and in 2017, Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis, he bought this plane. Yeah, they just brought a plane out of the ice, and this guy's like, yeah, I'll buy it, debit, no problem. And finally, number 1, a preserved mammoth cub. In 2010, a mummified mammoth cub was discovered in Siberia, right off the coast of Oyogos, named after a nearby village. Yuka, this newfound cub, is now the best preserved mammoth cub discovered in history. Now, this was a fascinating find that should have never been seen again, let alone found in such great condition. It's kind of haunting when you look at it. It still looks alive, you know what I mean? But apparently that's not the end of woolly mammoths. Who knew? It was announced only months ago that a team of scientists and entrepreneurs over at a company called Colossal, they're now planning to bring the woolly mammoth back to life. For reasons, for science reasons. The last mammoth to walk the planet alive was around 10,500 years ago, but what if they were alive today? Colossal raised over $15 million, and now they're working on reviving that woolly mammoth. They're doing this to ideally decelerate the melting of the Arctic permafrost and to save modern elephants from extinction, and of course, to advance CRISPR editing. Number 10. Inca mummies. Right off the hop, we got a 3-in-1. Buckle up, folks. March 16th, 1999, right near the summit of Lililaiko, so around 7,000 meters up in the sky, near Argentina and Chile borders. Right all the way up there, ancient history, it appears it was just waiting frozen in the cold. It was waiting in the form of 3 Inca mummies. Further studies found that they were most likely sacrificed in the name of some sort of religious Inca ritual around the year 1500 CE. It's quite a long time ago. They were found in a small opening less than 2 meters under the ground. Now again, this discovery was shocking. They looked like they were just asleep. That's what being frozen does to you. It makes your body look nice and fresh all the time. But in reality, they'd passed around, the 1500s. They're some of the most well-preserved mummies in the world. They now rest at an exhibition in the Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina. So if you're ever in Salta, there you go. Number 9, giant beaver skull. Big beavers, you say? All right, hit that thumbs up. So the Yukon permafrost, it seems to be a hot spot of sorts. As it should be. Lots of ancient animals just got stuck in time, and of course in great condition, lucky for us. Scientific name for giant beavers back then was Castroides ohainus. The giant beaver was on average larger than humans. As Jurassic Park as this thing looks, it only ate pond weeds. It was a gentle giant. He was a fan of the salads, it seems. Hold the beef. You would think otherwise looking at it. It looks like a monster. One of the largest rodents in history, rather. They were probably really cute. I'm not gonna lie, they look kinda nice, at least on Google. 50,000 years ago, they didn't chop down trees, just weeds. It's kinda nice. Smaller beavers outlived them once conditions warmed up. Like others on this list, they moved north. They followed the ideal conditions, and that led them ultimately to their icy demise. That is, well, more often than not, the Yukon permafrost. Number 8, surgeon notebook. All right, all you nerds, get your old textbooks out for this one. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm always so interested. Even in video games, that's not even the boring mission for me, I'm like, yeah, let's find those ancient scrolls. Let's do that first. It feels very national treasure to me to find ancient notes from somebody that they wrote. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon a long time ago. It's over 100 years old, and it was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica. The owner was that of George Levick. He was a photographer and a surgeon who traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This was from 1910 to 1913. Also, what a 2-for-1 combo. Guys, 2 amazing jobs. So different. The book itself was completely frozen shut and the bindings were toast, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. Thanks to that frozen stuff, it actually survived a lot of conditions. You can still read descriptions of photos George took at Cape Adare. That's history right there. Number 7, Antarctica Pyramid. Okay, here we go. A little bit of alien stuff. Why not? Here on Bumblebee, we like talking about the pyramids of Egypt a lot. We're fascinated with all things ancient and history. Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I had to know what was going on. This was back in 2016, where a mountain in Antarctica was trending online all of a sudden. Now, we all immediately thought it was evidence of an ancient civilization because, well, that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're hoping for every time we hit refresh on that History Channel. page channel. Eric Rignott, a professor of Earth System Sciences at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding. He added the quote, "Pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. So just a rare anomaly, just a rare frozen anomaly, or I don't know, maybe there's some frozen space aliens." Number 6, Grasshopper Glacier. Yeah, if you aren't a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip to number 5. I will not take it personally. Just hit the thumbs up at least, you know? Do something. A glacier in Montana is home to thousands, millions, I don't even want to know how many, grasshoppers and locusts, just all stuck in time right here. Yeah, imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. What an idiot. Well, appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, this mile-long glacier near Krug City holds the remains of extinct giant grasshoppers. Yeah, they're dead and frozen and gone, but you can still see them, which is not great. These poor guys were traveling to find new life a long time ago, and they must have gotten caught up in some cold winds, and now they're stuck here for another few hundred years. This reminds me of those suckers that have the little insect inside. Who actually buys those, you know what I mean? You see them in gift shops a lot, scorpion inside, like, nice. One lick and I'm done. Number 5. Preserved wolf pup. When this little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago, I bet she had no idea that she'd ever see the sun again. That's a long time ago. Discovered in, you guessed it, Yukon, Canada, Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water out of frozen mud. He was like, wait, stop, hold on. And they found this. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little lady. Also treasured, you know, I take that back. She's also treasured. They did find treasure. X-rays tell us she was only 6 weeks old. X-rays also tell us that she was a fan of fish. That was her meal of choice. She loved eating fish. Poor thing, damn. I'm looking down like it's there. I'm like, we really missed you. All right, close the casket. Let's get out of here. Number 4, frozen treasure. Here we go. Is it a wolf pup or is it actually frozen treasure? Because Buddy's asking. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is very recent. You know, we don't find these often. Treasure frozen in ice, again, sounds like something out of a video game. I can't help it, this is so intriguing. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across a small box filled with jewels, just jammed in the ice. Now, they had to breathe on it a little bit, you know, melt it out, pop it out a little bit, whatever. But once it was done, they reported it to French officers. Now this box contained around 100 precious gems. Precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees, you name it. This box was worth 300,000 US dollars, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, I'm like, that's it, I'm calling in sick. I find a toonie under the ice, I'm like, I'll wait till this melts. Well, since it was discovered on Mont Blanc, officials were able to trace down the lost gems back to an Air India flight that actually crashed on the mountain back in 1966. That's where this came from. The lives of 117 passengers were sadly lost, and because of the harsh conditions, it's been next to impossible to have recovered anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? No one wants to climb and do any of that, it's impossible. Now, somehow these family gems were able to see light again as well, and yes, the owner did return the gems. Thing is, 2 families claimed the goods. I'm surprised there's not more, to be honest with you. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter, Daniel Roche, found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier. So, yeah, some glaciers are filled with bugs, other glaciers filled with gems. So, 50-50 really, you never know what you're gonna get. Just lick and hope. Actually, don't do that, you'll get a sore throat. Number 3, the Glacier Girl. Before you get worried, no, this next one is not a real person at any time. The next one here is a plane, a P-23 aircraft to be specific. It was discovered in Greenland, surrounded of course in ice. Now, during World War II in July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and of course, low visibility. The crew was saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of a 264 feet bank of snow and ice, and it took years to finally get this plane back out. She's known now as the Glacier Girl, and in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO, Rodney Lewis, he bought that plane. Can you imagine having that kind of money? You're buying ancient frozen planes? Like, it doesn't work, you know that, right? All right, cool, rich guys. Number 2, blood red waterfall. We've all seen that video or photo of the waterfall that's underwater. It's a nice little optical illusion, looks kind of scary. Never want to swim again after seeing that. The blood red waterfall is a little more jarring. On the southern side of our planet, there's a waterfall in Antarctica that is blood red. It is haunting to look at. I don't ever want to see this in person or on the internet again for that matter. The edge of Taylor Glacier, great name for a glacier, my god. This is a one-of-a-kind waterfall waterfall that pours into Lake Bonny. So millions of years ago, when sea levels rose up, glaciers naturally formed at the top of the lake. So this melting water that's slowly leaking out from a quarter mile deep, this water is now 3 times saltier and 3 times as scary to look at. When the iron-rich water then reached the air, it looked bloody. I mean, more than fair. Just seeing photos of this, it's jarring. It looks like there's a lot of healthy iron pouring out of there. Number 1, fish eat fish. This one's kind of funny, you know, funny timing. We gotta finish on a nice, is that a real photo? We gotta finish on one of those. If you know anything about me, it's that I'm not a fan of lakes or oceans or anything underwater. I'm good. Land, beaches, plains, perfect. Let's do that. This video went viral not too long ago and it is very real. These 2 brothers were fishing on Indiana's Wawasee Lake and they saw a pike eating a bass, only both parties were completely still because they were both already dead and both completely frozen. Mid-meal, this guy's got a fish in his mouth, frozen in time. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We found this. This is a real thing. They posted the original photo and nobody believed that it was real, so they had to follow up and post the video where they actually remove it from the ice. So totally official. I would also think this is fake too. It looks like a meme that you'll have in the back of a class where it's like, hey, always a bigger fish, don't give up, or something weird like that. Like Will Smith with a thumbs up next to like a glacier. You're like, is this motivation? I don't know, this is weird.